Okay. Do I show up anywhere yet? I don't see my me. No! Oh, okay. That's one. Where's my other one? Okay, good. Whoops. Sorry I'm a little delayed today, people. Um, you know what it's like when things take longer than you expect them to take? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. There we go. Okay. Alright. Now I'm organized. For varying definitions of organized. Barely organized. But we'll go with that. Anyway, hi. How you guys doing tonight? So, as I mentioned in at least the title, there we go, the title for these streams, videos, whatever. This is the first time that we saw the storm mechanic. I'm just gonna fast forward real quickly. Wait, what? Okay, yes. Astro Steed, or Astro Steel rather, for example. Um, what was the other one? Wing Shards. Oh yeah, Wing Shards, right beside it. There's some interesting cards in the set. There's always interesting cards in the set. But you gotta be I mean, obviously you gotta be a little finicky on what ones you're looking at. But yeah. Let's start taking a look at what we got in white. Actually, before I get too far ahead, um, if you're paying any attention to the social media platforms where I'm posting this stuff, so Blue Sky, um, Twitter/X, which I don't expect to see a lot of people following me on that because of all the headaches there have been from that as of late. My Discord, anything along that line. You got put in upside down. I apologize. I just got 3 cards in the mail today from face-to-face games that I'm kind of happy about. One of them is really hard to pin down. None of the shops in my area have got this card. Scepter of Eternal Glory. Let me just pull it up real quick. No, Ari. Four mana legendary artifact. Taps for any color. Or if you've got 3 or more lands with the same name, it taps for 3 mana of any color. Well, when you start taking a look at some of the decks that I've been building. Beep. Excuse you. Beep. Oh. Helps if I use the right card. Or the card. Wow. The right button. Yeah. Let's say, I don't know, let's go to my 5 color deck. Without going too deep into it, I'm just going to fast forward down to where the lands are. There's 38 lands in this deck. Right down at the bottom, you find my basic lands. Okay. 10 forest, 4 plains, 2 swamp, 2 island, 2 mountain. 10 plus 4 is 14. Plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, 16, 18, 20. I'm trying to run about 20 basic lands per card, or per deck. I get fairly close for some of them. My mono blue commons only deck, and there's enough like it runs actually 20 islands. There's enough non-basics that are interesting enough to play. This particular list runs, by the looks of things, 33 lands, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, the entire premise of this particular deck is every card that you're looking at is drawing more cards. You know, stuff that when it comes into play draws cards, stuff that when it dies draws cards, or maybe you draw or discard a card. There's a handful that don't, like One with the Wind, but this entire category here is there to pump my creatures first and foremost. However, if I can find a version that, like for example, Rousing Greed, that draws cards, I will play it. Most of my removal, including Relic of Progenitus, to some extent, draws cards. 5 cards that trigger on me drawing cards. Bulk draw is there more to draw more than just 1 or 2 cards? Third Path Invoker and Third Path Savant and Tomorrow's Invoker. I'm going to spend 7 or 8 mana, because at some point later in the game, you're going to start ending up with a bunch of excess mana. Suddenly it's like, hey, by the way, I'm going to draw more cards. I've got like 7 counter spells in here. Each of them draw me cards. My mana rocks. Arcane Signet is just, taps for blue. Bonder's Ornament draws cards. Commander Sphere, sack to draw a card. Firestone just produces mana. Lever of Acceptance, sack to draw a card. Mindstone, sack to draw a card. Oreska Relic, sack to draw a card. 7 of my lands do something about drawing cards. They either have cycling or they put cards back on top of my deck for my graveyard so I can replay them. Something involving playing with more cards. So this deck actually only runs like 33 land compared to the 38 that I normally go with, because it can draw so many cards. You hit 2 lands, you're okay. You hit 3 lands, you're doing well. So, but if I'm especially looking at like a monocolored or a 2-colored deck, Scepter of Eternal Glory ends up being a cheaper Gilded Lotus really fast. But then you gotta start looking at what kind of decks that you're playing with that actually want Gilded Lotus, because not all decks do, and this is something a lot of people gotta remember. I cannot remember the specifics, but I remember many years ago, I came up with a deck idea for Vintage, where the deck really didn't care whether or not it had Black Lotus. It really wasn't interested in it. Black Lotus, for those that don't know, most expensive card in the game. Most expensive mass-produced card in the game. We won't talk about the One Ring in this context. the bait, because the standard printing for the One Ring is only like, what? You can get it for as little as like 55 US. 55 US for that one, 75 US basically for that one. There's 3 different styles that you're getting for under $100. It's only when you're starting to get fancy they start costing more. And then the one version that's like millions of dollars because Post Malone bought it for millions of dollars. And it already started being high. And it just kept going up and up and up. But Black Lotus, barring weird shenanigans like that, because like I said, base price is under $100, is the most expensive card in the game. Most expensive mass-produced card in the game. And it's easily tens of thousands of dollars. And it's literally a 0 mana artifact that you sack it. I don't even remember if it requires to be tapped. I don't think it does. I think it's just sacrifice. Yeah, the most recent, yeah, tap and sack. Okay, the most recent pricing that that Scryfall has, which probably means TCG player has, that is legit, is roughly for the most recent printing. The most recent real printing is like 14,000 euros. So, like somewhere around 20 grand US or something like that. And so, yeah, it's literally just 0 mana artifact, tap and sack it, get 3 mana of any color. It's a one shot, but it gets you like triple blue or triple green or triple red or whatever. It's it's part of where Gilded Lotus came from. Gilded Lotus costs 5 instead of 0, but you just tap it, you don't sack it, and the ability is the same. Anyway, Scepter of Eternal Glory is not actually that hard. Good lord, you're cheap nowadays. What? And yet I cannot find anywhere that has these. um, but if you're running, first of all, you have to run enough basic land. Because realistically, there's no other lands. I don't think there's any other lands in Commander that you can run any number of copy of that are not basic lands. And to be fair, we now have 12 basic lands that follow that line. Mountain, plain, silent, swamp, forest, wastes, and snow-covered versions of all of those. Everything else, you're one of. So you have to run enough basic lands. And you have to not run enough that this is going to kick in. I would assume if about half of your lands, or at least half of your stable lands, and I'll explain that line in a moment, are basic lands, and you're running two colors or less, you're probably fine. Now, for those that haven't encountered this, me saying this before, what do I mean by stable lands? I put you. Give me a moment. Oh, so I'm about to sneeze. And of course, my body decides not to sneeze. Um, let's see if that worked. Hello? There we go. So, Island comes into play, stays in play until something happens to it. Okay? Strip mine. Counter example. Comes into play, taps for mana, or tap and sack it to blow something up. Not what I consider a stable land, because this is a card that's going to get it's going to get sacrificed fairly easily. Um, Lands that fetch other lands, typically also not stable. You sacrifice them pretty much right away. Escape Tunnel, good example. Comes into play, you don't keep it around. You might keep it around because you want to use it to make something unblockable. But realistically, most people are just going to sacrifice it pretty much right away to find a basic land. Cards like this, I do not consider stable because they, once they're in play, they disappear fairly quickly. You're not going to be able to rely on them turn after turn after turn. You could also make an argument for cards like Peat Bog and that cycle. The depletion lands that, once there's no counters on it, you sacrifice them. Partly depends on how the deck is built, but a lot of decks just run them as is, which is perfectly fine. But they run them as is, and as a result, after a couple of uses, they're gone. What's another good example? Tranquil Thicket. The lands that have got cycling. I'm more likely to consider these stable because you're going to play them as a land early on. Once they are in play, they're going to stay in play unless they get removed somehow. You want to remove them yourself by playing some kind of bounce land. Let's say, a card like Dimir Aqueduct. When it enters, return the land you control to its owner's hand. You return the Tranquil Thicket back to your hand, at which point then you can cycle it to draw a card. But barring that, you're doing this, it's going to be like a card like that is going to be, in my opinion, those are stable. Dimir Aqueduct, again, stays in play unless something happens to it, unless somebody uses Strip Mine or a similar effect or whatever. Casualties aware, who knows. Tranquil Thicket, you're probably okay considering it stable. Peat Bog, unless you specifically build around proliferate and whatever, and have enough lower cost stuff that you can actually, if Peat Bog comes out relatively early, you can keep it around. I would not consider this stable. I would not consider Escape Tunnel stable in most decks. Um, I would not consider Strip Mine stable because it gets sacrificed pretty much right away. Because, it might stay around for like 3 or 4 turns. And then it's going to get blown up. Somebody's going to see a threat that they have to deal with it, and they're like, get rid of it. But basic lands are your hallmark for stable lands. They come into play. They stay in play unless somebody does something about them. Also, I specifically bring this printing up. I am personally looking for more copies of this specific printing of Island. Invasion number 338. To put in my to quote somebody from one of my LGSs, in my mono blue deck that identifies as green. Anyway, all that being said, if you have out of those 38, 44, however many you run, first of all, you need to make sure you have enough stable lands. Just running 20 is not going to cut it. Well, what do I mean by just running 20? You know what? Let's go to my colorless control deck for a moment. So I'm going to ignore all these guys right now. You're a land, but you're basically a spell. You don't have a mana ability. Okay, my lands. I have 6 that are here to blow up a thing. 4 are here primarily to blow up lands. 1 is there to blow up, to hit a random, like, non-flying creature. And 1 is there to blow up, pop goes the world. I have 6 lands that are here to produce extra mana. Or, sorry, 9 lands that are here to produce extra mana. This one's going to be fun to pin down. I have 9 lands that are there for other interesting things. Proliferate, gaining life, casting spells with flash, tutoring, copying stuff, making treasures, whatever. But here's the thing. Like, the ones under explosions, these 6, are all going to get blown up fairly quickly and easily. These extra mana, Crystal Vein, I don't consider exactly stable. It'll be fine, but as soon as I need a boost of an additional mana, I'm sacrificing it for an extra colored mana. Or an extra colorless mana. Emergence Zone gets sacrificed for its ability. Inventor's Fair gets sacrificed to tutor. Mirror Pool gets sacrificed to copy stuff. Endless Sands gets sacrificed to bring stuff back. Command Beacon gets sacrificed to bring your commander back. Treasure Vault gets sacrificed to make treasure tokens. Myriad Landscape gets sacrificed to search up basics. So that's like out of my. So sure, 20, 29, 38. I'm running 44 lands. But around 8 or 9 of them I do not consider stable. That leaves me about 36 lands that I do consider stable, which I'm okay with that. This is part of the reason why I'm running more lands, because some of these are going to get blown up. You know, my strip mine effects are going to get blown up pretty much right away. You know, and a lot of the ones under my other effects, Myriad Landscape is going to get blown up fairly quickly. I just realized that share a land type. Wastes does not have a type. I cannot run Myriad Landscape appropriately in this deck. Myriad Landscape actually has to come out because Wastes does not have a type. It's a name, it's basic land, but they're looking to share a land type. They're looking to share forest or island or whatever. Okay, this is getting cut out. I'm probably adding Archway Commons instead, which is fine. I have use for that elsewhere. Anyway, back to the Scepter. If you're running enough stable, this is what I say, if you run enough stable lands and you run enough basics, Scepter of Eternal Glory is going to be fine. Long-winded way to get back to the Scepter discussion. It's going to be fine. The other cards that I got, I got Priest of Titania because she's only a common, but she's not exactly easy to pin down. I mean, yeah, so here's the thing. When I say she's not easy to pin down, I'm talking about going, like, actually going to, I have 4 local game stores and, you know, within a, a 10-minute walk diameter. So, like, half a kilometer radius. Or, like, a third of a mile. Cards like that sell out easily. They're commons. Uncommon in Modern Horizons 3, I think it was. But common elsewhere. And people want them for multiple decks and don't want to trade them in. They snap up easy. So I had stored credit with face-to-face games. And I got my Scepter. And I got the Priest. And those are both for the same deck. They're both going into Lathril Elves, although I'm not sure I need Scepter of Eternal Glory for that deck, because that deck is going to produce a fair amount of mana, but I'll see what happens. And then Hissing Quagmire, you know, which is a black-green land, because my deck is black-green, that can become a creature with Death Touch till end of turn. Pay a cost. Make it a 2/3? Sorry, 2/2 Death Toucher till end of turn. Okay. Hey, it's a land that can kill a creature. What? Yeah. Anyway. That finally came in today. I was hoping, not expecting, but hoping they would have come in late last week. They didn't come in late last week. Today's Wednesday. They came in today. Yay. The order got out. Went out about a week ago. They're in. So that's cards for last rolls that I can knock off my list now. Scourge. Let's start with Scourge. Let's start with white. Card number 1, Exile Doomslayer or Doomsayer. Exile Doomsayer says all morph costs cost 2 more. So it's not bringing the thing into play face down. Or that's not casting the thing face down. Because you are casting a creature spell when you cast with morph. It's turning it face up. Part of the problem why this is so low on the list of playables is there are easier and better ways to flip stuff face up. Again, one of my favorite combinations. Oh. Is this. You cast the Chroma Angel Fury face down. You cast that Chroma Angel Fury face down as a morph. Because she has morph for 3 red plus 3. You're not going to play 3 red plus 3. This is modern legal, incidentally, as well. Cast her face down as a 2-2. On your, on turn 4 then, or turn 3 if you've got some kind of accelerant. You cast Restoration Angel. When she enters, you may exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. When something is face down, like you have a morph or something that's been manifested or cloaked or whatever, it's going to be a 2-2 with no abilities. Maybe it's got ward because of the newer versions, whatever. No name, no relevant here, no creature type. That means the Chroma Angel Fury, when she's face down, has no creature type, which means when she's face down, she is not an angel. Restoration Angel takes a look at that and goes, oh, cool. That's a random creature. Doesn't look like an angel to me. Exile it, bring it back. Oh, you were an angel. Yeah, hi. You don't look like an angel. Sorry. Should we go beat face together? Yeah, let's do it. Slightly surprised that a Chroma Angel of Fury doesn't have haste. But she can't be countered, so that's fine. So turn 4, you suddenly have 9 power worth of Angel on the board. This is a method I like. But morph 3 red plus 3. If you were to actually morph her, you need 6 mana. With Exile Doomsayer out, you need 8, which is basically what she costs to cast natively. But you get an effect like Restoration Angel. Ephemerate is a commonly played card in a lot of decks and a lot of formats. That, Philia, Eldrazi Displacer, Ghostly Flicker, anything of that nature at all. Blur. Exile a creature, and then bring it back. There are cards that literally just say turn target creature face up, turn target face down card face up. There's a bunch of cards, there's a bunch of ways of just getting it into play face up anyway. And so bypassing having to pay the morph cost is not hard. Which is part of the reason why Exile Doomsayer is so low on the list. People don't play this because because the problem is this only affects morph. This also pardon me. This only affects morph. So technically morph and megamorph also count because megamorph is specifically a variant of morph. Like they literally say this is morph except in addition this. But otherwise it's treated as morph. Manifest is handled separately. It's similar, but it's handled separately. Same with Manifest Dread and Cloaking and all that other jazz. They're related, but it's like it's kind of like one's your brother, and then like the others are like, cousins or nephews or whatever. Yeah. Anyway. So the first problem that Exile Doomsayer has to deal with is it doesn't have anything to do with the other mechanics. The second problem, which is the one that has existed longer and has existed at least since Morph has existed. Sorry, longer than the second one is a problem that existed by the time Morph came out. Is there are ways to turn it face up without having to use the morph ability. and the way I like to, because some people get confused on this. Restoration Angel specifically says the card gets exiled and then returns to the battlefield. Morph does not have the creature leave the battlefield. The way I word it is it just changes form. It's like, it's like if you have Hulk. The big green the big green smashy Avenger. Out of Marvel. And he doesn't, going from Bruce Banner to the Hulk or vice versa, he doesn't leave the battlefield. He just changes form. He can be, there's that one scene in, I think it's Avengers, where he's literally running and he starts off as Bruce Banner and just runs and changes into the Hulk in the process. good example of what happens with effects like Morph. Still on the battlefield, just changing in a different form. Superman out of DC has a habit of disappearing, especially if there's other people around, because he wants to maintain his secret identity. I don't think Banner cares nearly so much. Disappears, changes his form, and then comes back. That's what Restoration Angel does. That's why there's a break in between, and you have to worry about summoning sickness, whereas, if it's already on the battlefield and it's already been around since the beginning of your most recent turn, you don't have to worry about, or you have something that grants haste, you don't have to worry about summoning sickness. You can just do whatever with it. Anyway, so yeah, Exile Doomsayer, not that big a deal. Doesn't affect enough stuff, and even stuff that it does affect is you're going to be paying the morph cost a lot less often than it appears. And this doesn't even count morph costs that don't involve mana. One that's in at least one of my decks is Ruthless Ripper. She's in, I think she's in my Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Which sounds funny to say, but I think she's in my Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's a commander deck with, some surface similarities to Yu-Gi-Oh. It has a couple other things in there to be Regekis. It has gods. It has traps. It has stuff. And because she's got Morph, it's got a bunch of cards that can enter the battlefield face down. Usually in face down attack position. However, there are a few cards in there that will make stuff enter the battlefield tapped, i.e. in defense position, so I can have stuff enter in face down defense position. Yeah, I've also got a couple of things there to be something resembling Exodia, fusion / succeed / rituals, etc. So on and so forth. I did, however, fail at putting in there something to be Pot of Greed. That was... I'll figure something for that out later. Anyway. Ruthless Ripper has a morph cost of revealing a black card that's in your hand. That's all it is. Well, okay. If it's just revealing a black card, okay. Well, now you have to pay 2 mana on top of that. Okay, fine, whatever, don't care. So yeah, Exile Doomsayer, it's going to be really hard to find a useful place for that. Trap Digger, da-na-na-na. 4 mana for a 1/3 human soldier. Pay 3 and tap it, put a trap counter on target land you control. And then at some point you can sack a land with a trap counter on it to do 3 damage to an attacking creature that doesn't have flying. If you're willing to sacrifice enough lands, you can blow up a bunch of creatures and a bunch of stuff. Again, I would not be upset to see somebody play. I'd be like, wait, you're doing what? Okay, hold on. Let me catch my breath. So you're sacrificing your land to kill stuff that's attacking. And here's the fun part. Because it involves counters, right? there's going to be ways that you can move those counters around. So maybe you put out a few and then you proliferate and then find a way to shuffle those counters around to other lands instead of having to pay 3 and put it. But yeah, like the basic way of thinking of this is, I pay 3 mana, I put a counter on this land, and then I can sack that land to hit an attacker for 3. Or you can let them build up. And let them build up. And let them build up. I have a question. What does Solemnity say? Oh no! Solemnity absolutely kills some lands. Counters can't be put on ... or lands. If you're doing that, don't play Solemnity in your deck, folks. The trap counters, you'll activate it. It'll be legal target. It'll try to resolve. It'll fail. Put the counter on the land. No proliferation shenanigans. None of that. Anyway. But Trap Digger is going to... I would be entertained, especially since somebody is playing Trap Digger. They're likely going to have a way to recur the land somehow. I would expect that they would have green in their deck, because green has the easiest way to recur your lands and play additional lands. Now, are there other ways to do it? Sure. But my first step, my first thought would be you're playing, at least Lesnia. But there's other ways to do it. There's always other ways to do it. Anyway. Yeah. Like Trap Digger, you could just completely blindside somebody, especially if you're one of these people that goes, oh, okay, I'm putting a trap counter on my land. What? Yeah, I'm putting a trap counter on my land. Okay. Because most people are going to look at that and go, what's the trap counter for? But they're not going to ask. Because there's so many counters in the game. And the funny thing is, most counters don't actually do anything in and of themselves. Charge counters don't do anything in and of themselves. It's just stuff references charge counters. Counters that directly affect a creature's size, +1/+1 counters, for example, have obviously an immediate, an actual effect themselves. Ability counters, a flying counter, a death touch counter, a indestructible counter, whatever, grant the ability in question. But most counters, a dream counter, a stun counters, I think, no, I think stun counters actually do. I think stun counters in this context would fall under ability counters. They're not, but they would be handled in this context in the same way. But like dream counters or experience counters or charge counters, as I mentioned before, and like a whole bunch of the counter types that get used. Time counters don't do anything in and of themselves, but other stuff references them. Poison counters are like the other, probably the other major counter type that actually does something in of themselves. But that's because the rules say say they do. Well, to be fair, that would also be true with ability counters and whatnot. Anyway, so trap counters. Trap counters are just a type of counter that in and of themselves don't do anything. You need to find something that interacts with trap counters. Anyway, Trap Digger, I would be entertained, at least in the short term, to see somebody playing this card. This is not. I think this is bad. This is interesting and novel, and I haven't seen that before. Huh. Zealous Inquisitor. If you can generate infinite mana, you can use this to kill people. Now, to be fair, if you can generate infinite mana, you can find ways to kill people anyway. But 3 mana for a 2/2. 1 white and 1 other. Colon. The next 1 damage that would be dealt to Zealous Inquisitor this turn is dealt to target creature instead. Okay, so I've got 6 spare mana, so the next 3 damage that would be dealt to Zealous Inquisitor, I'm going to shunt over there. Why? Well, what's over there? I don't know. Do you want it to be Stuffy Doll? Do you want it to be, Phyrexian Vindicator? Or do you want it to be something else? Oh, I know. You have a Phyrexian Negator in play. Oh no. Oh, shoot your Phyrexian Negator 3 times. Sacrifice 3 permanents, please. Oh. And that's why you don't play Phyrexian Negator in Commander. Too much combat, too much damage-based effect. Yeah, too many damage-based effects to make it worth playing. You want to play it in a format like Vintage? Possibly throw it in your sideboard. Because against control matchups against non-red control, sorry, let's try this again. Against control matchups that are not using red to deal with creatures, you're going to be fine. Side them in. Have a 3 mana 5/5 beat stick. Yeah. But that's going to just start burninating creatures left, right, and center. It looks at, it attacks, it looks at a blocker, and it goes, cool. That damage is going over here. Oh, you've got Death Touch? Cool. I'm going to send, because the funny thing is, the source of the damage is not changing. So if somebody blocks with like a 3/3 Death Touch, you go, cool, I've got 6 open mana. Ping to that, ping to that, ping to that. Oh, by the way, the source because the damage it doesn't say the damage is being done by the Inquisitor. The next damage that would be dealt to this creature is dealt elsewhere instead. The damage, cool, it's a 3/3 Death Touch. Okay. Damage from a 3/3 Death Touch is going over here. Damage from a 3/3 Death Touch is going over here. Damage from a 3/3 Death Touch is going over here. Ping, ping, ping. Kill those. It's just redirecting the damage. Have fun with that. Recuperate. Don't bother. In In an absolute pinch, you run recuperate for like a big chunk of damage prevention. Don't use it for the life gain. Unless maybe if you're going like mono commons like a lot of the decks I do, and you're building around life gain, maybe consider recuperate for getting 6 life, but you should be able to gain 6 life easier than that. Oh yeah. Renewed Faith does it for 1 less mana, and you can cycle it and still gain life. Viridian Harvest, you throw it on an artifact, and when the artifact is put in the graveyard, you gain 6 life. Pulse of Marasa, really strong. 3 mana instant, return target creature or land from a graveyard to its owner's hand. Usually you bring it back to your own. Gain 6 life. Nourish, if you just want gain life. 2 green, instant, gain 6 life. Or Fond of Vigor, 2 to cast, 3 mana and sack it, gain 7. If you're looking to gain a bunch of life at once, you have like I would play these for maybe not Viridian Harvest, but I would definitely play these for before I even considered thinking about Recuperate. If you need something for damage prevention, maybe, but I wouldn't recommend it. Even Farseer. Whenever creatures turn face up, put +1 counter on the Farseer. So it's a 1/1 flyer for 2 mana. With the ability to potentially get really big. You want this in a deck that's going to have stuff that are going to actually get turned face up themselves. That's going to be the bigger problem. You need the creatures, you need your stuff to be able to get turned face up themselves. I would not rely, because realistically, in a 4-player game, I would probably expect one person to have some cards that turn face up, but I would also expect that they'd either, they would probably have other ways to get them turned face up instead of, again, the same problem as the Exile Doomsayer. They're not going to get turned face up, they're going to get flickered or whatever instead. So if you're playing this card, you're playing this because you have stuff in your own deck that you're turning face up, and you plan on running effects that say turn this card face up, whether that's using the morph mechanic, morph manifest, anything of that nature, or effects that simply say, turn a card face up. Also, keep in mind, it says permanent, so it has to be something that's in play. If it's not something that's on the battlefield, even if you've got a way to turn it face up, it's not a permanent. And originally said creature. They changed the wording from creature to permanent because I think it was Time Spiral Block gave us our first non-creatures that could be turned face up. Zoetic Caverns and Lumen Threadfield come to mind. Wet Wheel, I think, as well. There were like 3 or 4 of them, I think, at least. But there was more than 2. And so every so often you'll come across something that can be turned face up, but it's not a creature. But when it's face down, it's a creature. So that's the reason for the wording change. Um, but yeah, if you're playing Aven Farseer, play it because your own deck has stuff that you want to turn face up. Chrono Zealot. that that same thing that we mentioned about Zealous Inquisitor. So this is a 5 mana 2/5 with a morph of 5 mana, just a slightly more difficult 5 mana. 1 white plus 4 to cast, 2 white plus 3 to turn it face up. Slightly harder. Not enough to make a difference at that point. But when it's turned face up, all damage should be dealt to it this turn, so to the Zealot, is dealt to target creature instead. So, what you can do is, I don't know, I'm going to go back to just for... Oh, that's funny. This is a triggered ability. Emrakul the Eon's Torn... Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about Rule 0 for a moment, because in this case it's actually relevant. I'm not going to go deep down the rabbit hole. We hope. Rule 0 basically says if you want to do something, you know, that might be... Rule 0 is basically, if you want to do something unusual, talk to your group. And if they say cool, go for it. Let's say, okay, so there's the quote-unquote official ban list for Commander. And I put, you know, official in quotation marks because Commander is, well, up until last year, it's a player-run format. It's a casual format. It's something that, while Wizards of the Coast produce products for it, they support it, but everything was handled by a different group, an external group. The ban list, as a result, is more a matter of these are cards that we recommend that you don't play if you want to have a good experience. However, if your group wants to do something different, go right ahead. If you want to do something different, discuss it with your group, and if they say okay, go for it. That's always been the premise for things like the ban list and why the rules are, for Commanders specifically, are the way they are, and so forth and so on. So, what this means is if your group says it's okay, you can play with Sylvan Primordial and Sway of the Stars and whatchamacallit, Emrakul the Eon's Torn, and if you can afford it, Ancestral Recall and Black Lotus and all that jazz. Go ahead. If your group says it's okay, it's okay. That is the primary thing. That is the primary takeaway here. This is what Rule 0 is for. Discussing with your group, especially if you want to do something unusual, like, yeah, I have this deck here that's all commons, but it technically has like two game changers in it, but it's all commons. Are you okay if, based on that, we consider this like a bracket 2 deck? Because I'm not playing, because apart from the couple of game changers, most of the cards in this deck are not actually powerful. They're not even uncommon. I don't get to play Wrath of God. I don't get to play Strip Mine. I don't get to play this, that, whatever else. And some people will say, okay, go ahead. Because one could argue that's a bracket 1 deck with some upgrades. So, anyway. Why I bring this up. This is a triggered ability. If this would take a bunch of damage from something, you can shunt it off to a card like Emrakul the Eon's Torn. Oh. You can almost hit something that's got hexproof. Oh, all damage that would be dealt to it this turn, including damage that happens later on in the turn. This is a proactive shield. Oh, wow. This has got so many things going on with it. This is a card you guys got to pay more attention to. This has got a bunch of stuff. Like, this card says it has 3 modes. I did some mental analysis, and actually, let's go with the original version of this instead. Let's go with Funeral Charm. Exact same card, just in black instead of in blue. This has got 3 modes. I realized this has got 5 ways to use it. Mode 1. Target player discards a card. It says target player, so that can be you or one of your opponents. Typically, one of your opponents, often this is going to be, on their draw step after they've drawn their card for a turn. But it can be other times, and so on and so forth. Funeral Charm. Discard a card, no big deal. Target creature gets +2/-1 till end of turn. +2 power means hitting through for an extra couple of points of damage. -1 toughness means it can kill off small stuff. So there's 2 modes. Sorry, there's 2 uses hidden in that mode there. Last one. Target creature gains Swamp Walk till end of turn. The second way of using this is going to be a little more difficult. A little more difficult to actually find a time for it to actually come up, but it can come up. I'm going to assume a card like Urborg Tome of Yawgmoth, turning everything into swamps, because even in formats like Modern, it sees enough play to mention it. A creature that's got Swamp Walk cannot be blocked if its controller controls at least one land with a swamp type. Urborg turns all lands into swamps in addition to their other types. Ergo, if you have Urborg out, like Urborg Tome of Valmoth, ergo, if you have Urborg out, yeah, it's unblock. You can't block this. The primary way people are going to do this is it's a little similar to the second mode, the +2 pair, getting through for extra damage. I'm attacking with a 5/5. Before blockers are declared, I give it Swamp Walk till end of their turn. You have a swamp in play. You cannot block this. Get through for 5 damage, and that could be lethal. This makes it more unblockable than something, in a context like that, more unblockable than something like Trample. It approaches this creature can't be blocked. It can't be blocked as long as they've got a swamp. Here's the other way to use it. If your opponent is attacking in such a way that you are forced to block, but not because of things like your life total, but because other effects, like lure, for example, say this creature must be blocked, or this creature, especially all creatures that can block this creature this turn that must do so. You're playing black. You probably have a swamp in play. You go, I'll give your creature Swamp Walk till end of turn. I now cannot block this creature. Sure, I take 5 damage, but all my creatures live. And you've probably wasted whatever effect. Because a lot of people that play with effects like that are playing with one-shots. And so suddenly their creature isn't going to be killing any of your stuff. Your creatures stick around and you get to get them potentially on the swing back. So this is why I say it doesn't look like it, but this one mode here has got 2 different ways you can use it. One offensive and one defensive. The last option is going to be harder to pull off. But you have 3 modes, 4 different ways that can be used, but one of those ways can be split into 2 different manners. And Piracy Charm, exact same card, it's in blue instead. Deals with islands. Anyway, yeah, so when I'm talking about, cards that can do many things, Chrono Zealot feels like one of those cards that it looks simpler than it looks relatively simple. And it's not that difficult a card to deal with, but it does a lot more than it looks. Even Liberator. The flip side in terms of in terms of morphing versus cost to the Zealot. This is 2 white plus 2 to cast, 1 white plus 3 to turn face up. So it's a 2/3 flyer. When it's turn face up, target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice till end of turn. If you're playing birds, I would at least be looking at this, because this allows you to save your general from things like Star of Extinction and whatnot. You may not have to run an effect like a Chroma's Memorial. If you're not, running effect like a Chroma's Memorial, even Liberator can save your bacon. Chroma's Memorial and Eldrazi Monument. I might go Monument first, but at least like keep this in your back pocket as an option. Giving color protection to of your choice to land a turn is really strong, especially if you somehow have a way to turn it face down again. Then things start getting a bit silly. Ageless Sentinels. We've talked in the past. We've talked in the past about the attacking walls deck. This is a 4 mana 4/4 flying wall, and because it's a wall back in the day, basically got told it had defender. When this blocks, it becomes a bird giant, or back in the original wording said giant bird, and it loses defender. The reason it says it loses defender is because again, walls. The wall creature type had inherent rules baggage attached to it, where it said in the rules that creatures that had the wall type couldn't attack. That was in the rules, and it was attached to the creature type. This is why the wording on the Oracle text says it loses defender, is because soon after the set came out, within a couple of years, they separated those two. And so now all walls have defender. So all creatures that have defender don't necessarily have, aren't necessarily walls. They may be walls and, with a lowercase, but not the wall creature type. But giving them defender gave them the ability to actually produce more cards that had defender without having to make them walls in the first place. Pardon me. Anyway, so when this card was printed, simply changing its type away from wall meant it lost defender because the inability to block was part of the rules associated with being a wall. Since they separated those two, not a problem anymore. But now they actually have to put in line saying, and it loses defender, because how it works, the job of the Oracle text is to look at a card, look at the time frame when it was printed, and emulate it as closely as possible with modern text. Because defender was part of the rules, they have that additional piece of text to keep that because also keep in mind, like the way it's worded, just look at this top section: creature, wall, and then as reminder text, wall can't attack. As reminder text. That tells you that this walls can't attack is part of the rules. Because why would they put it in reminder text otherwise? Now we have a wall with defender, and instead of saying walls can't attack, it says this creature can't attack. So yeah, they're making it work the way it used to work. And now you end up with a 4/4 bird giant. And I think they went with bird giant in the Oracle text as opposed to giant bird, because giant bird sounds like it could be one giant bird, like one bird that's like the size of a house or whatever, or the size of a mountain. Look up Rocket Care Ridges. ROC, not ROCK. Rock. Anyway, so once it blocks, it's a 4/4 flyer that can attack. So, I might. So, do I consider this for an attacking wall deck? It's a wall that eventually gets the ability to attack. However, when it gets the ability to attack, it's no longer a wall. Interesting. I'll leave that up for the comments. I'll let you guys hash that one out. Rain of Blades. Rain of Blades is not actually bad. 1 white, instant, 1 damage to each attacking creature. Plain, simple, easy. Cool. You're attacking with a bunch of stuff. Ping them all. Okay, now that they've all taken damage, now I'm going to choose blockers. Wait, what? It's even more fun when, you know, they're attacking you and you've got first strike. Oh, that reminds me. Whenever it says attacking creature, a creature is attacking. A creature is considered attacking a lot longer than most people realize. Combat breaks down into 5 steps. Beginning of combat. At the beginning of combat, choose a creature you control. It gains haste till end of turn or whatever. Declare attackers. After which people can do, stuff like play instants. But it's still part of the declare attackers phase. First, you choose what you're attacking with, who you're attacking, and pay all relevant costs. And if it's illegal, you control Z and try again until you actually get one that you can do. Declare blockers. Same as declare attackers, but for people that are blocking instead. Combat damage. Damage is assigned. And then once it's all been assigned, then it resolves. End of combat. There are some effects that say at the end of combat. I believe this is when your zombie tokens that have decayed blow themselves up. But an attacking creature is considered an attacking creature until it's cleaned up during the end of combat. The end of combat step. So, somebody can do something really silly, wait for combat damage to be dealt with, and look at, okay. So, okay. Sorry, I was only half paying attention there. So that, and that all live with like 1 left? Like they survive by a point each? Have I got that right? Yeah. Rain of Blades? They're all dead now. What? Yeah, they're all dead now. But this is still technically during the combat during the combat phase. There's still, yeah. You can be that guy. It's terrible, but you can do that. Dragon Stalker. Again, would not complain about somebody playing this. You're playing a bird deck? Play it. You're playing a soldier deck? Consider playing it. 5 mana for 3/3 with flying and protection from dragons. Not only are dragons dragons, but surprise, surprise, dragons is a creature type. Anything that's got all creature types, dot, dot, dot. Yeah, a pretty decent card, honestly, all things considered. It's this mean, and because protection specifically does four things: can't be damaged by anything with the appropriate source, can't be enchanted or equipped by anything of the relevant type. Much more difficult to pull off when you're, dealing with dragons, but, protection from green, for example, means you can't throw any green enchantments on it. It can't have green equipment attached to it, etc. Can't be blocked by anything of the relevant type, so this is, if your opponent's playing a dragon deck, this is going to get through for damage every turn. Give it vigilance, and it can block them as well. And can't be targeted by anything with the appropriate type. So if somebody's got a dragon that's like, tap this, deal damage to target creature equal to the number of dragons you control, or some effect of that nature, you go, yeah, you can't target my dragon stalker. Why? It's got protection from dragons. You cannot target it. Deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. Have fun playing. Like, especially if you're playing on a budget, this is like, you. I have commonly seen stores go minimum price for commons is a quarter and uncommons is 50 cents and rares is $1. I could see this being a 50-cent card. Depending on where you are, you might be able to get this for a quarter. Worth it. Dawn Elemental. Have this written down in my cube. Still haven't finished physically building the cube. It's taken a long time. But one of the things I wanted to do was give people a payoff for playing monocolored. And my payoff, if you did end up going mono white or heavy white, was Dawn Elemental. Quad white for a 3/3 flyer. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Dawn Elemental. You need an effect like Path to Exile or Doomblade or whatever to get rid of it. Because if you try doing it with combat, if you try using the fight mechanic, if you try Lightning Bolt or whatever, it just turns around and goes, that's nice. I'm not taking any of it. Technically, you can still target it. It just doesn't do anything. It literally just sits there and goes, shrug. Got any more? Yeah. If you have any sort of legitimate reason for playing it, play it. And Daru Spiritualist. Daru Spiritualist is kind of funny. This feels like a combo piece. I don't have a specific combo in mind, but this feels like a combo piece. Whenever a cleric you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, it gets +0/+2 till end of turn. This is a cleric, so it also means whenever this becomes the target of a spell or ability. So if you've got a way to infinitely target the Spiritualist, this is going to get +0/+2 till end of turn. You target it, say, 50 times. it's going to be, barring other effects, 1 power and 100 toughness. You then use some kind of effect to like swap its power and toughness. Um, Usually red and blue do that. Black has got some ability to do it. I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head in white or green that can do it, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. And then some kind of fling style effect. Again, red is the... So you probably want to be running at least Boros for something like this. But you just end up with this giant, this creature with a giant butt. Here's the funny thing. As long as you can continually target it multiple times a turn. Like, consider throwing this in a Toughness Matters deck. You know, like Dorian the Siege Terror. Oh, you're blocking with like a 7/8? Okay. Oh, ping, 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 ping. Oh, target, 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 target. Cool. This is now I've targeted it 4 times, so that's 8 plus 1 is 9. Oh, but I deal combat damage now based on toughness instead. So this is now essentially going to be dealing 9 power back to your creature. Sorry, you were saying. Yeah. Daru Spiritualist, it's got a couple places that can go. It's good, it has options. Let's look at blue. Mercurial Kite. This feels a little bit like it wants to not have flying. This is one of those weird cards where flying can actually be a bit of a drawback. But it's 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer, and realistically at this point in the game's history, you're looking at 1 blue plus 2 for a 2/2 flyer. And if you want something with like a competent ability, you're commonly paying 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer with a competent ability. Whenever Mercurial Kite deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, as in the other creature. So basically, you stun it for a turn. It doesn't get stun counters, but the effect is you stun it for a turn. Because it has flying, you either, you attack, and any flying or reach creatures they have that block this, that take damage from this, won't untap next turn, but they're being defensive, so you'd also need another way to tap them. Or they're attacking, you block with this, and then it can also be a ground creature at that point. You block, you kill, whatever. The kite will probably die because it's only a 2/2. And if people are attacking into the fact that you've got a 2/2 flyer, their creatures are probably, the same size or bigger. So this probably dies. But if it's dealing combat damage back, their creature doesn't untap next turn, which could be relevant. You probably want to block their largest, ideally non-trampling creature. But if you can absorb the extra life loss, then blocking a big trampler and not having to worry about taking anything from it the following turn might be worthwhile. Raven Guild Initiate. Considered throwing this in. Also, anytime I look at this card, it's like, it's cool, But that outfit is just weird. It's kind of like armor that's got holes in it. I am very confused by it. Like, like I'm looking here. There's like there are sections where it's like, how do you stay together? You're not going to stay together. Like this is begging to just rip apart here. That's going to fall apart. There's just going to be so many sections where it's like it's going to come apart. Anyway, um it's a 3 mana 1/4 with a morph cost of returning a bird you control to owner's hand. I considered throwing this in my Yu-Gi-Oh deck, because it's a creature that's got morph, and so stuff that can enter the battlefield in face down position, face down. In my case, face down attack position most of the time. Um, yeah, but unfortunately, I didn't figure I'd be running enough birds to make it worthwhile. But then you get a 2/2 that can suddenly turn into a 1/4. But in the era when this was printed, combat damage used to go on the stack. And so combat damage would be like assigned, the damage would go on the stack, and then you could respond to it, and then the damage would resolve. And it's in that little instance after it went on the stack and before it resolved that you turn this face up and you basically are handling combat that instance of combat instead of as a 2/2 or a 1/4. For a brief moment, it's basically handled as a 2/4. But, yeah. I don't think I'd bother in most decks. Um, that being said, you're playing blue, you're going to be playing with funny shenanigans. You might have stuff like, xenographs, naming bird or whatever for whatever. Or or you've got Masquerade Nexus or something of that nature. And so maybe you've got enough of that or enough changelings or enough just random. The kind of deck that you're building happens to have enough birds that it's worthwhile. Or making them actually. Doesn't Murmuring Mystic. Murmuring Mystic makes birds, bird illusions, but it makes birds. That is interesting. But this comes down. The Murmuring Mystic costs more and would have to come down before the initiate. Less likely. Not unlikely. This is Commander after all. It can happen. But less likely. I don't think I'd bother. Ah. Thundercloud Elemental. So, 7 mana for a 3/4 flyer. So, back in the day, let's start off with Air Elemental, which was 2 white, 2 blue plus 3 for a 4/4 flyer. So 2 blue plus 3. So you're paying an extra, we'll say 2.5, like just barely over 2 mana. Because you're losing a point of power, but just barely over 2 mana. But, blue plus 3, tap all creatures with toughness 2 or less. Blue plus 3, all other creatures lose flying till end of turn. Do you know how much havoc that can wreak on certain decks? Like this feels like this should actually be good somewhere. You're paying 2 extra mana over Air Elemental, which, to be fair, is not considered a great card. But you're losing 2 mana over Air Elemental. Let's say. Nah, okay. Go away. Bans you. So, you're paying 2 extra mana. I mean, my 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 problem is that the well, no. I was going to say my problem is the activate abilities cost so much. But this is not like dealing with crowd favorites, which had some um which was 7 mana for 4/4, 4 to tap a creature, or 4 to give a +0/+5 till end of turn. Which was kind of a lot. 9, but you spent 11, 9, 13, 15. Wow. You'd have to activate this like 4 times and be playing with toughness matters for this to break even between between its toughness and the amount of mana you spent on it. Anyway, um but yeah, this is a 7 mana 4/4 with 2 4 mana abilities that were okay. 4 mana to tap target creatures, kind of a lot. But, if the creature is reasonably costed, like 5 mana I could see, then, 4 for tap target creature, I'm okay with that, and 4 to give a plus or plus. No, they made it 7 to cost. No, just bad. Whereas this is 7 to cost for a 3/4 flyer, which, again, you're spending an extra 2 and a bit. And its abilities are 1 colored plus 3 other, just like crowd favorites. And it's also an uncommon. 4/4 versus 3/4 flying is roughly a wash between, white and blue. But the abilities here are so much better. Especially the second one. All other creatures lose flying till end of turn. The ability to just screw up combat completely by going, hey, by the way, I've got this in play. I'm paying 4 mana. By the way, none of your creatures are flying now. What? Yeah, none of your creatures have flying now. Or, contrary, you can actually, try and help somebody. No, Raking Canopy? Is that the right one? Yeah, Raking Canopy. Whenever a creature with flying attacks you, this enchantment deals 4 damage to it. Well, oh, you're attacking me with a bunch of flyers. And there's, you know, hold on. Before you declare attacks, gonna make your creatures lose flying till on a turn. Why? So Raking Canopy doesn't kill them all? Oh, okay, sure. This last ability is just, or, and the funny thing is, it's all other creatures, which means the Thundercloud Elemental stays, keeps flying. This can attack and it's going to be really hard to block. Much prefer this over the crowd favorites. 100% would play this in a heartbeat over crowd favorites. Slightly harder to cast? At 7 mana, I don't care. 2 blue plus 5 versus 1 blue plus 6 at 7 mana. If I don't have my second colored source by then. If I'm playing 5 color, maybe it's a problem. I'm playing like 3 or less, I'm probably fine. Yeah, Thundercloud Elemental. If it's something that interests you, like that last ability is just amazing. And the tap all creatures toughness 2 or 6, 2 or less. It's gonna be a bit harder to make work well, but I mean, if your opponent, if nobody's table has got any sort of, well, toughness 2 or less, so anything that gives +1/+1, if they're natively 1/1s, is still toughness of 2. So you have to have a couple of those kind of facts. And if they don't, or if they don't have something that gives like a bigger boost. Nice Squirrel Army. Taps them all. What? Taps them all. During the beginning of combat, I tap down your Squirrel Army. Scornful Egotist. Scornful Egotist had a reason for its existence. I'm not saying it's good, but it actually had a legitimate reason for its existence. This block, and it might have been this set in specific, I don't remember, but this block had a handful of cards that took a look at the mana value of, it basically looked and said, what's the highest mana value you've got in play? And so Scornful Egotist, it's an 8 mana 1/1 with Morph for blue. Its job was to be likely the most expensive creature, the most expensive permanent you had in play, and the most expensive creature you had in play by mana value. You never cast it for 8. You got to play face down. You turn it face up for blue in response to something else you were casting. I believe this is Scourge. Okay, Rush of Knowledge. From this set, also common. Draw cards equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. It's a 5-drop, so at 6 mana, you cast this, and in response to casting this, you turn the Egotist face up, and then when this resolves, it'll see an 8 mana card. You go, cool, I spent 5 to cast Rush of Knowledge, +1 to turn the Egotist face up. I'm going to draw 8 cards for my 5 mana investment. That was the job of Scornful Egotist. To be a card that you could play cheap and had a high mana value to draw a lot of cards, or other effects that cared about similar effects. Cabal Conditioning did some kind of discard effect. And there were other cards that any number of players each discard a number of cards equal to the number of greatest mana value among permanents you control. So you turn it face up, and suddenly everyone's having to discard 8 cards, which probably means their entire hand. Accelerate Mutation is basically 5 mana for a giant growth effect based on the highest mana value. Dispersal Shield. Counter target spell if it doesn't cost more than your highest mana value. Reward the Faithful. 1 mana. A number of target players gain life equal to the highest mana value. And Torrent of Fire deals damage to any target equal to your highest mana value. The number of times I've only like half read this card and went, meh, not worth it. It actually does a lot more than it looks like at first glance. The problem is, like, 5 mana sorcery, realistically, in a lot of cases, you're probably doing like 4, 5, or 6 damage. So we'll say 5 damage to any target, which isn't bad. It's like Lava Axe, but to any target. But it's 5 damage for 5 mana. Is that enough? You know? This feels like it wants to be in a deck with a bunch of cards that cost more for some reason. And notice that none of them care about the color of the card, just the mana value. So Affinity, for example, has got a lot of 7 drops in it. You know, or if you look at, even if you look at my mono brown ramp deck, cut you, you're there for ramp, you're there for ramp, assembly workers, removal, nothing there's gonna matter, recursion. Wow, where are you guys? Stuff to ramp into, 11. The cheapest in this section is 6, and I've got like 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 6, 8, 8, 6, 6, 8. So I've got a bunch of 6s, almost as many 8s, and a 7 and a 9. So in a deck like that, Torrent of Fire is regularly going to do, is more often than not, well, there's 11 cards, so 1 and 9 is going to be something that's there specifically to ramp into. Which means by the time you cast Torrent of Fire, you probably have at least 1 in play. Which means Torrent of Fire, by the time you cast it, is probably going to deal at least 6 damage. I would say on average, because 7, you group the 7 with it, yeah, probably I would say at least 7 damage, which is not unreasonable. I think that's a fair assumption. In a deck like that, I might put Torrent of Fire in. My problem is that I look at that and I see, like, I look at that these days and I see it's a 5 mana sorcery that's going to hit a creature for a bunch of damage. So if I'm doing that, I might as well play Aftershock, Lava Flow, Fissure, Introduction to Annihilation, or something similar. there's, if I'm going to non-commons, there's, I think it's Cindercloud. Is that the one I'm thinking of? There's another one that starts off with Destroy Target Creature. That's in mono red. That's also 5 mana. That can burninate the opponent. Like burninate the controller. So it's the same cost, and it's also sorcery. If I want Torrent of Fire, I want it over something like that, because it does say, I mean, it said back then target creature or player. Nowadays it says to any target, which again also means planeswalkers and battles because they didn't exist yet. But at that point you're going, cool. Let's take your Tibalt down down a few pegs. Or maybe you're playing it in a deck that's got Tibalt, which is like 7 or 8 mana, etc., etc. So, but again, that was the purpose for Scornful Egotist. Don't run it nowadays. Between cards that have got Escape, cards that have got Delve, or your giant beasties in blue that care about how many instants or sorceries are in your graveyard. Some of them that say graveyard or exiled, and other stuff like that that you can cast for cheap. Never mind, your cards have got affinity for whatever or what have you. Back then, there were not easy ways to get a high mana value card for cheap, especially in blue. Nowadays, you have options. Play them over the Egotist. Even at common. The number one reason to run Egotist is for the memes. And if you're doing it for the memes, go ahead. Don't be surprised if somebody looks at you and goes, aha! But if you're doing it for the memes, you don't care. That's the entire reason for doing it. Frozen Solid. I have this in at least one, if not two, of my commons only decks. Kind of as a removal spell. It keeps a tapped. It keeps words. It keeps a creature that's tapped down. As something deals damage to it, it gets blowed up. Because it's kind of like, it's, well, if you look at the image, for example, it's stuck in a block of ice. But if you end up hitting through to the creature itself, as opposed to the ice, it's frozen solid. It shatters. Nice flavor went on there. But yeah. Blue does not get a plethora of ways to remove creatures. This can help kill a creature. This plus like Viridian Longbow on like one of your creatures, it's like, cool, it's dead now. Metamorphose. Metamorphose is weird. Metamorphose is one of those weird cards in the line of like polymorph effects. Keep in mind that Artifact, creature, enchantment, land. What am I missing? No, that was it, wasn't it? Instant and sorcery. Everything else came out after it. Yeah. I don't know why they bothered enumerating it. But like 2 mana instant, put target permanent an opponent controls on top of their library. This is great because this is one way to remove an attacker and delay it for a turn. That opponent may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land from their hand onto the battlefield. Basically, they could have just said permanent again. I don't think there were any other permanent types that existed yet. Because I think once Planeswalker came out, we had 7 types. And Tribal made it 8. I think that's Kindred now. That feels right. Because you had these 4 plus instant and sorcery makes 6. Which are not permanent types. But they are card types. Yeah. They could have just said permanent. May put a permanent card from his or her hand into play. I don't know why they didn't just say that. Because this would be like a decade before they even tried Planeswalkers. Don't know. But that being said, this is a polymorph effect that, you take a chance on what your opponent's got in hand. That being said, if you've had the ability to keep an eye on what your opponent's been drawing somehow, you can make use of that. Or if your opponent's empty-handed, it's like... But yeah, this this can this has got a few things going on for it. Like I said, you're attacking with like 5 big creatures. Okay, take your biggest one, put on back on top of your deck. You can drop something else in play, but it's not attacking because attackers have already been declared. So even if it's got haste, you're SOL. Yeah. So yeah, you can play this as... This is a tough one. I would rather play Frozen Solid and Thunderscape Elemental realistically over Metamorphose. I can see uses for Metamorphose, but you have to be careful with that. Although that being said, throwing it on an Icecrown Scepter is hilarious. Whoops, wrong one. So yeah, um, I would consider it temporary protection. That being said, next card, Coastal Watcher. If you're playing birds, you might want to look into this. Why? It has a phrase that you do not see very often that's going to be useful when you're playing Commander. It's a 2 mana, 1/1 flyer, bird soldier. It has flying and protection from green. Green is a very, very commonly played color on its own and in other and with other combinations. I would say that protection from green. You're playing blue. You you're playing birds. You should be playing this. Pardon me. You're playing birds. You should be playing this. You're playing a lot of things. Like at least have this. You know, at least be aware that this thing exists. You know, and if you dare follow my footsteps at all and start building decks that do stuff outside what their color is known for, you should be you hit blue, you should be running this. Coastal Watcher, a blue a blue flyer with protection from green, yeah, you should be running this. Cuz blue does protection from X hardly shows up ever, and it's almost always on white. Sometimes on uh sometimes on black, usually to counteract the white version, because white usually has, protection from black, and then the black version's got protection from white. Um, Rarely, um, green and red get involved in that as well. And the ultra rare, sorry, the foil, the playable foil mythic version is blue getting protection from a color. It does not happen very much at all. And green being as popular as it is in Commander, yeah, play this. Hindering touch. Hindering touch is going to be hindering touch. Let's start at the beginning. One blue, three other. Counter target spell unless its controller pays two. Storm. For those that are not aware, Storm basically says when you cast a spell, copy it for each other spell that was cast this turn. You do not have to have cast them. They just have to have been cast. So if if I cast a draw spell and somebody goes, well, I'll counterspell it, and somebody else goes, ha, Tybalt's Trickery or your counterspell. Well, that's three spells have been cast, and if another player then turns around and goes, cool, I'll hindering touch your draw spell. One base, and three other spells have already been cast that turn. There's going to be 4 copies of this on the stack. So you're going to see 4 copies of counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 on the stack. Which means if I want my draw spell to resolve, assuming everything else happens, and assuming all the copies were pointed at my draw spell, yeah, I'm going to have to pay an extra 8 mana if I want to draw those cards. I probably don't have the extra 8 mana. I might have 4. Which means I can probably turn around and go, oh, by the way, I'm going to spend 2 of it against your counterspell and 2 of it on your Tybalt's Trickery just because it's funny. Yeah. Yeah. So, Storm, copy it for each spell cast before it. Does not matter who cast them. If you're playing with counter spells and you want to be able to do like a mana leak variant, if you expect at least one other person to be running counter spells of some sort in your group, consider Hindering Touch. Raven Guild Master. Are you playing Milson? This is one of those cards that you want to make sure gets unblockable. 2 blue plus 1. Morph for an extra. You're probably just going... Well, no. If you're running enough morphs, you may cast this as a... You may do this as a morph. If you've only got a handful, I would just probably cast it straight up. Because especially once people have played you once or twice, they'll be like, yeah, I know what card that is. But if you're playing with, like, you know, a dozen morphs, what do you think this one is? Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 10 cards of their library. As in, barring some very unusual shenanigans, they're not getting them back. But you're not getting them back. Your top 10 cards, gone. Goodbye. Yeah. You hit somebody... I would say if you hit somebody six times, they're probably about dead with this. 8 for sure. So if you give it double strike, 4 attacks, your opponent's your opponent's pretty much dead by that point. And if you're playing this in if you play this in 60 card formats, you give this double strike. Depending on the kind of deck they're playing, you might be able to actually hit them only twice. And even without double strike, I would probably say 5 attacks. This kind of attacks as a 4-power creature if you look at it from that direction. Yeah, kind of silly. Shoreline Ranger. Again, 3/4 flyer for with Island Cycling 2. 3/4 flyer for 6. This always felt a bit expensive to me. Not a lot, but a bit. Again, start off with Air Elemental, 2 blue plus 3. So if we went 1 blue plus 4, you could probably get away with a 3/4 flyer. So an extra mana gave you Island Cycling. However, this has actually historically seen play in Vintage. I can't remember about Legacy, but definitely Vintage. Because it had 3 things going on for it. I mean, we are talking, more than 20 years ago. Well, we're talking about 20, well, maybe more than 15 years ago, anyway. So, 6 mana. Yeah, it sounds like a lot. You are talking a format where you get to play with Mox and Black Lotus and all of that jazz. So, this was something that you could reasonably cast in a reasonable amount. Faster than it first appears. Also, the only other format where you can legally play Sol Ring. You had a 6 mana, 3/4 flyer which was, I mean, it's a decent size. It's going to beat fairly decently. Number two, it had island cycling, so you didn't have to use a fetch land to grab your underground sea or whatever. You could use this. You know, if you needed your watery grave, not your watery grave, if you needed your underground, wow, if you needed your polluted delta to fetch Bayou, let's say, you could use this to fetch your underground sea. Uh, so it wasn't a great use of it, but it was a use of it. And then it did have the third option, which people like to sometimes like to joke about. It was it was a consideration that put it a little further up than it would have been otherwise. Oh, must be good. It's blue. It pitches the force of will. A lot of tongue in cheek there, quite often. Again, made it slightly better than it would have been otherwise. And there's just enough to it that people are like, okay, yeah, we will actually try this card and see what it's actually like. It didn't see a lot. It didn't see a lot of play, but it was fine. But you can get your island cycling for one. Like you can get basic land cycling at 1 mana now. You've also got a bunch of other cards that have got island cycling these days to work with. But this was the first time we actually had land cycling. First time, what are you going to do? So again, it was a little on the expensive side even back then, but you also didn't know how broken or weak it could end up being. So it's still fine. Again, I wouldn't fault anyone for playing it. There we go. Now it's paying attention. Now it's listening to what I'm telling it. Yeah, no idea what's going on there. But yeah, that should not have happened. There. Boop. All right. Whatever. Anywho, as I was starting to say before I was so rudely interrupted by my computer saying it wanted to crash. Um, Dragon Wings. There's a cycle of these. Um, there's one for every color that basically turns around and says, "Hey, I'm a 2 mana enchantment that I give, like I give enchant creature some ability, but whenever a sufficiently expensive creature enters, I get to jump into play from the graveyard attached to that creature. I don't think they all have cycling. Set Scourge. Oh, battlefield attached. No, they do. In fact, Dragon Wings is the only one that's got cycling. Um, White gives +1/+2 in vigilance. They're all 2 mana as well. Uh, I don't know if we'll cover the others or not, but just quickly, the black one gives +1/+0 in fear, which is can't be blocked except by black and or artifact creatures. Red is haste and fire breathing, which was relevant for a bit in Vintage because relevantly it came into play from the graveyard and gave haste. Dragon Fangs +1/+1 and trample. But Dragon Wings, hilariously, this one you could get to work all on its own because um its self-reanimating ability requires it to, well, be in the graveyard first. While to get in the graveyard, you can cycle it. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like you pay 2 mana, draw an extra card, and then eventually get a big expensive creature in play and go, hey, by the way, it now has flying on top of everything else. So there are ways to make it work. Enjoy. Riptide Survivor. Really wish this was common because I could have put in my commons only mono blue deck that, tries to draw a bunch of cards. 3 mana for a 2/1. Morph cost of 3. Slightly harder morph cost. When it's turned face up, discard 2 cards, then draw 3. The being able to draw 3 is not attached to the fact, is not attached to you whether or not you discarded 2 cards or not. It doesn't hinge on that. So you could only have 1 card left in hand. You could be empty-handed when you turn this face up. And if that ends up being a thing, then you do as much as you can. You discard the 2 cards that... See? If you have less than 2 cards in hand, discard all the cards you have. If you have no cards in hand, you can discard 0 and draw 3. There's a reason why it's, 3 to morph it. Yeah. Pretty decent card if you want something that you can turn face up to draw cards. Especially if you empty your hand fairly easily. But that's now blue covered. Black. Fatal Mutation. Probably wouldn't play it. When enchant creatures turn face up, destroy it. It can't be regenerated. It's cute, but again, the number of ways that you can cheat stuff into being turned face up. Probably wouldn't bother. Putrid Raptor. 6 mana for 4/4, but it's got morph of discard a zombie card, which means you can play it face down for 3, and at any time discard any zombie you want. Maybe something that can come back into play from the graveyard, like what do you call it? I'm drawing a blank on the name. I hate it when that happens. No. Gravecrawler? You may cast this from a graveyard as long as you control a zombie. Yeah. So you can turn this face up and have a 4/4 with no drawback, and then uh cast Gravecrawler and get, what is it, a 2/1? Yeah, 2/1. So for 4 mana, you got a 4/4 and a 2/1 in play. I don't see a drawback. But yeah, I'm not saying you should run Grave. Although if you don't run Gravecrawler, there, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, if you're running Putrid Raptor, you run zombies that can do something for you from the graveyard. Is Icarid a zombie? I don't remember. No, it's a horror. Um, but yeah, find zombies that have uses somehow while they're in the graveyard. Stuff that can be exiled from the graveyard, stuff that can come back from the graveyard, stuff that have just random abilities while they're in the graveyard or whatever. Chill Haunting. Chill Haunting you kind of want as a removal spell, but honestly, I wouldn't I wouldn't play this, especially with, in the modern days of things like ultimate price and cast down and, you know, the various edict effects and everything else. Wouldn't do it. Additional cost, exile X target, X creature card from your graveyard. You're going to want most of the creature cards in your graveyard for some reason or other. Unless you happen to be one of those handful of decks where once it's in your graveyard, it doesn't do anything for you. If that's the case, then go ahead and play Chill Haunting, and this will kill things that other things won't, because -X bypasses things like indestructible. So be aware of that. Also, sometimes just shrinking a creature by a bit is sometimes enough to do what you need. Kill, shrink a creature during combat so you can eat it and get bonuses for Sengir Vampire or whatever. Zombie Cutthroat. I mentioned this card earlier. Actually, no. I meant to mention this card earlier. I pulled up something else instead. I forget what it was. Oh, it might have been Ruthless Ripper. Yeah, 5 mana for a 3/4. Meh. Overcosted by at least one by at that point. I think 3/4 you might have been able to get away with like triple black. Um, Morph, pay 5 life. Which really realistically means that you had a 3/4 creature that cost, because you're gonna cast it face down and then pay 5 life. And you're going to have, it's basically 3 mana as additional cost to cast this, pay 5 life, and have a 3/4 creature. Feels a bit strong. Not nearly so bad when you're looking at Commander. Yeah, it's fine. It's a 3/4 creature that costs you 3 mana. You can probably do better, but even so nowadays, it's not easy to find a like especially something with a relevant creature type, a 3/4 for 3 mana that you can cast off of like it's black, but you can cast straight generic. It's fine. It's one of those like 60, 63rd or 64th card sort of things maybe. But it might find a home in some slots. Clutch of Undeath. Clutch of Undeath is cute. If you're playing zombies, at least look at this card. Now, I'm not going to say you have to play it, but at least look at it. Half the time, this is going to be, a big pump, and half the time, it's going to be a removal spell. And the reason why it costs 5 mana is because it can be either one. And again, minus X deals with some things that Destroy and whatever can't deal with very easily. Somebody's got a stuffy doll in play, kill it. What? Yeah, just kill it. No, just kill it. Go away. Um, I'm primarily, I'm primarily looking at this for if I'm playing zombies and I want like a big pump spell on one specific zombie. Lingering Death. At the beginning of the end step of enchant creature's controller, that player sacrifices that creature. One of the few cards that I can think of that basically turn around and, I mean, because it's an aura with enchant creature, that basically force a player to sacrifice a specific creature. No, you're sacrificing that. This is true, like I just said, because this is an aura that enchants the creature in question. The funny thing is, if you can find a way to bounce the creature around to other players before your end step begins, you can't sacrifice it. It could just keep bouncing around with the aura on it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Um. But yeah, it's a honestly, you want most edict effects over this. The only reason to play this over other edict effects is it's an aura. And if you've got any sort of aura synergies, that's why. Or enchantment synergies, that's why you play this. Otherwise, nah, play the other effects. Final punishment. Target player loses life equal to the damage already dealt to that player this turn. Keep in mind, it tracks damage. Not how much has your life total gone down? Damage specifically. Because damage can be dealt to creatures, players, battles, planeswalkers, etc. Life loss is only to players. So, If something says this deals 3 damage to target player, that would count towards final punishment. If it says target player loses 3 life, it does not, because that was life loss. That's not damage. This is why the cards like this are a little more finicky. It's again, it's doable, but you'd have to build your deck. I would say you have to build your deck around it. This is not just throw it into whatever. This is no, you have to build your deck around it. Of course, this also gets funny when you start adding things like once you get things like damage doublers and whatever involved, this gets out of hand and can just be like your finishing blow to kill off a player. Cabal Interrogator. I don't generally recommend um, discard effects in general for Commander because it's not that style of. I don't see it as that style of game. It doesn't mean you can't play it that way, but I don't see it that way. It feels, to me, it feels wrong. That's something that's acceptable in like a competitive format, but at the kitchen table, you want people to have a good time. You know, this is the sort of game of Magic that you want for like you haven't seen each other in like 10 years. Hey, let's play. Let's get into like this big crazy 3-hour multiplayer game and just the it's less the game itself is less important than spending time with each other, sort of thing. Um, Cabal Interrogator, I would be less unhappy with, partly due to the fact that they get some agency on what you get to see. Um, don't go don't do the silly. Hey, by the way, I can untap that. I can generate a whole bunch of mana and I can untap this multiple times. Don't do that. You can. I would give you a psionic slap upside the head if you did, but you can. But if you're going to do that, there's easier ways to pull that off. Um, Death's Head, Death's Head Buzzard. Wow, I can't word. When it dies, all creatures get -1/-1 till end of turn. I mean, you might as it. Can you recur this multiple times? You know what I find is funny is this is just a bird. It's not like a zombie bird or something like that. It's just a bird. I'm just a bird. Doo-doo. Uh, yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. But yeah, when it dies, all creatures get -1/-1 till end of turn. If you want that effect, just play an effect like Nausea or Infest and its variants. Give all creatures -2/-2 till end of turn. For an extra mana over this, you get all your mutilate style effects. Um, God, what's the one that gives -4? Languish. Yeah, so for an extra mana you get Languish, which can kill a lot of things. Or for like 1 or 2 mana, you can get effects like Nausea that can just kill all the small stuff. Virulent Plague? You the one I want? Virulent Plague creature tokens -2. I can't remember what the smaller one is. There's one that's like 1 mana, gives them all -1/-1. Illness in the ranks. Yeah, so I mean, there's enough ways to get that. Eh, Cabal conditioning we talked about a bit earlier. Um, if you're playing a discard strategy, if Cabal conditioning is really good. If you want a quick and easy way to discard your hand, there's this combined with anything that costs, a reasonable amount of mana, you know, like Scornful Egotist being an 8 drop. But again, you can do better. But that being said, if you're just discarding your own hand, one with nothing. Consumptive Goo. A lot more interesting. 2 double black for a 1/1. 2 black plus 2. Target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn. So this temporarily gets -1/-1. Put +1/+1 counter on Consumptive Goo. But I get a permanent boost. I'm going to bleed you a little bit and make myself permanently stronger. It sounds more like a vampire to me. I'm not going to bleed you dry. But I'm hungry. Yeah. I think this needs to see more play. It can eat a bunch of small stuff so easily and just get as big as you want it to get. The only thing to keep in mind is the target has to be legal when the ability goes to resolve for this to get the counter on it. It's the only thing to keep in mind. Beyond that, have at you. Unburden. A slightly more expensive mind drop, but it has cycling. Um, Again, it's a discard spell. Uh, Enough said about discard right now. That being said, if you're to play that sort of thing, like even just like a couple, Unburden I think would be fine because it has other uses. You can just simply pitch it. Red cards. Rock Jockey. Oh man, Rock Jockey I thought was hilarious. 3 mana for a 3/3. If you've played a land this turn, you can't play Rock Jockey. And if you cast Rock Jockey this turn, you can't play a land. So you can either play a land or you can play the jockey. This feels like one of those cards where it's like, well, I don't have a land drop. Okay, I guess I'll play this now. The biggest problem is nowadays you've got like 3/2s and 2/3s and possibly even 3/3s at common that have got upside. I mean, you've got like 1/2s for red that And when I say for red, I mean like a single red mana and nothing else on the cost that have upside. Um, you know, there's one that's like ends up being like you control an artifact. It's a 2/2 with haste. There's one that's got first strike, haste, and something else like a sack ability or something. I forget what it is. And there's a few of them nowadays at common, and they're goblins. So this I see being a tough sell. That being said, it's still a fine creature to cheat and play, but then if you're cheating it and play, you're cheating into play a 3/3 that only has restrictions on how you can play it, and that's it. It doesn't have any, enter the battlefield or leave the battlefield effects or, any combat abilities or this or that. It's just a 3/3. Once it's hit the board, it's just a 3/3. Eh? But back in the day, I thought it was hilarious. Um, would not play nowadays. Even in the goblin deck, would not play nowadays. Even in commons only goblins, probably wouldn't play it. Bonethorn Vallesk. Whenever a permanent is turned face up, this deals 1 damage to any target. Play it. Feel free to play it. Anyone that's turning their permanents face up by any means, apart from, flicker style effects and whatever else. If they're actually turning it face up somehow, you get to ping stuff. And if you're playing the deck that does it, just do it. Just do it. Anytime you turn something face up with some effect, it's like, hey, by the way, thunk. Start killing your opponent's generals or whatever. Skirk Volcanist. 4 mana for a 3/1. But you can cast it face down as a morph, so 3 mana for a 3/1. Which is easier to handle. Morph cost, sack 2 mountains. When you turn it face up, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among a number of target creatures. In other words, I can go 3 to this, 2 to this, and 1 of that. Or 1 of this, 1 of this, and 1 of this. Because that's the only way to split up 3 damage. 3, 0, 2, 1. 1, 2 is the same as 2, 1. Or 1, 1, and 1. If you've got a way to give it death touch, the funny thing is, if you throw, let's say, Basilisk Collar on it while it's face down, when you turn it face up, it's because, like I said before, it hasn't left the battlefield. It's still going to have the collar on it. So then it will be dealing the 3 damage with death touch. So suddenly you can kill 3 creatures. It's an idea. Misguided Rage. Oh dear. Misguided Rage does potentially give you a way in mono red, not easily, but in mono red, to deal with enchantments. If they don't have you basically have to get them to the point where they've got, let's say, no creatures or no creatures that they're willing to blow up. No lands or no lands that they're willing to blow up. No artifacts or artifacts that they're willing to blow up. Planeswalkers can be attacked and, bolted and whatever else. Battles, same thing. What other permanent types are there? Enchantments. Target player sacrifices a permanent. If they don't have anything else they want to get rid of, they're going to have to start sacrificing enchantments. It's not an it's not an easy way to do it, but it is a way to do it. That being said, there's other ways I'd rather do it. But yeah, it's a thing. um Thing is, you can take a look at what the board consists of, and you can pretty much tell what your opponent's likely to blow up. They're likely to blow up, um, they have X in play, so they are likely to sacrifice. What am I looking for? Oh wow. Okay, nothing. Oh well. Sorry, just want to check to see what my app said for seeing if there was anything in the chat on. Yeah, nothing. Because system crash and whatever else. Anyway, uh, you can pretty much take a look at what the opponent's got in play and go, if I do that, they're probably going to sacrifice that. Is that fine? Yeah, if it's fine, go for it. Of course, it's even funnier is if you've got a way to play it at instant speed and you've mind slavered them, and then you get to turn around and say, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're gonna sacrifice this, but you're sacrificing this because I control you during your turn." Oh, Goblin Brigand. One of the earliest, they they've been trying to print 2 mana 2/2s for a long time at common. And it's at this point, and I don't mean like modern day, I mean at this point, it was hard because realistically you were looking at like 3 mana got you like a 2/2 with haste. We're talking at common anyway. Higher rarities, especially rare, you could get away with like a 2 mana 2/2 with something, but not easily. Or maybe like a 2 mana 2/1 with like a bunch of abilities. I think you got Silver Knight in this around this time. No, Silver Knight was Pro Red. No, Blood Knight is the one I'm thinking of, which would get you. That would be Time Spiral Block. Anyway, it was really hard at that point for you to get a 2 mana 2/2, even just a 2 mana 2/2 vanilla. You're playing green, no problem. You're playing white, not easy, but they did exist. You're playing blue, black, or red, forget it. If you did have a 2 mana 2/2, it had some kind of drawback. Um, This is one of the earliest drawbacks that was actually, relatively playable level. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm if you're playing standard, let's say, you have shock and you've got volcanic hammer. Okay, cool. I start killing your creatures. I'm getting through for damage. I have to attack. I'm going to get through for damage. And I think you had pillage. Did you have pillage at this point? I know you had demolish. So, nowadays, and just like what I was saying earlier about Rock Jockey, this has been outclassed. You don't play this unless you've got a real good reason to anymore. Although the funny thing is, it used to say it attacks each turn of Fable, which, could easily be. Oh, well, I've been declared as an attacker this turn, so I'm good for the rest of it. And now it says attacks each combat of Fable. In other words, every time it has the capability to attack, it has to attack. Torrent of Fire, we covered earlier. If you want a healthy sized red burn spell that's got a fixed cost, Torrent of Fire is fine. It's regularly going to do 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. If you're playing in other colors as well, you can potentially get that higher. Keep in mind that anything that's got X in its cost, a lot of Hydras, for example, when it's on the battlefield, X equals 0. When it's anywhere except the stack, i.e., currently being cast, X equals 0. While it's being cast, X is whatever X is. After that, it's 0. Extra arms. Kind of funny if you throw this on something. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's kind of funny if you throw this on something that's got Death Touch. Because at that point, then it becomes whenever enchanted creature attacks, destroy target creature. What? 2 damage to any target, but then it's the source. Because it's the creature that's dealing the damage. Yeah. I'm not saying it's the greatest way to spend 5 mana, but it is a way to start killing creatures every turn for 5 mana in mono red. Again, Basilisk Color or Gorgon's Head or whatever. Uncontrolled Infestation. This is basically a downgraded Blight, but an easier cost. Blight was double black enchant land. Whenever enchanted land becomes tap destroyed. This can now only affect a non-basic land. This era specifically, Odyssey block, Onslaught block specifically, more aimed towards non-basic land. It's fine. They still get the use out of it, and if the land happens to be indestructible, nothing happens. But, I honestly, I would play. I would play almost everything else before Uncontrolled Infestation so far. Carbonize! 3 mana, 3 damage to any target. If it's a creature, it can't be regenerated this turn. And if it would die this turn, exile it instead. The funny thing is, the 3 damage could be Not enough to kill it. But then you hit it with something like Aftershock, which says destroy target creature, which would cause it to die, which would cause it to get exiled. That's a lot of mana, and that's like 7 mana and 2 cards to do exile target creature. It is a legal play. Not saying you should, but it's a legal play. I'd probably make use of the extra arms instead for that. But, you know. um, that being said, you know, this is. We were already at the point when we considered Lightning Bolt too strong, and even what would eventually get called Lightning Strike or Searing Spear um, was still a bit ahead. We were playing Volcanic Hammer because we had to, not because we wanted to, which was basically Lightning Strike as a sorcery. Mm, yeah. But based on that, Carbonize was actually okay. It's basically Lightning Strike with a. No. Something tries to send you to go graveyard, you're going away for good. So it was okay, and I would even back then I would prefer to play this over uh over Volcanic Hammer, but you played Volcanic Hammer because it was 2 mana. But if you really needed to get rid of things, you play this. um 3 mana. Yeah, you know what? I if I'm looking for burn based removal, I might actually consider Carbonize. Like Lightning Bolt first, obviously. Again, personal opinion. Not that I recommend Lightning Bolt, etc. Because there's other ways to, they're more expensive, but there's other ways to deal with stuff, even in red. But if I'm looking at burn based removal, Lightning Bolt is in there. Um, I would probably skip on like Lightning Strike Edo and probably go to Carbonize. Yeah, it's an extra mana, but it gets rid of like other options just so much easier. Oh yeah, Goblin Psychopath. This thing is funny. When you really want to confuse people on who it's actually attacking. 4 mana for 5/5. When it attacks or blocks, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, the next time it would deal combat damage this turn, deals that damage to you instead. Yeah, that's why the goblins behind him are like, ah, I don't know what's going on. If you want a chaos deck where you could even end up getting hit by it, at least look at the psychopath. Chartooth Cougar. Uh, Similar conversation to what we had earlier about the shoreline. Um, Good lord, what were you called? Shoreline Ranger. Except it does not have the benefit of being blue and thus pitching to Force of Will. But 6 mana for 4/4 with Fire Breathing at common is not actually terrible. Slightly overcosted, but not by much. And again, it has mountain cycling. I would not be like if I'm playing a mono red deck as an example. This is fine because that fire breathing means next turn I can be hitting for like 10. That's fine. Even if two of that mana is coming from like Soul Ring, okay, I'm only hitting for 8. Or in a pinch, I spend a couple mana and I get a land out of my deck. Enrage. He wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Ah, dear. Yep. Yeah, it is from the 70s Hulk series. Ah. Oh, wow. Alright, you're not gonna let me do it. Anyway, whatever. But yeah, that line comes from the. I mean, I remember it being from the 1970s era. The Incredible Hulk, which had Lou Ferrigno playing the Hulk. He's a big guy. um, and I don't remember who played Banner. But yeah, Enrage, it's literally you took Hell from Beyond from like Alpha and shifted it over into Red. It's the exact same card, you know. And if you want to, the great thing about this compared to an effect like Fire Breathing is you don't have to care about like you only need a single red and you just dump everything else as whatever color you've got handy or colorless and just go here, take an extra 12 damage. What? Yeah, this much is red, this much is green, this is orange, this is purple, this is blah. Take it. But it's sadly not a card that's the problem with a card like this is you also have to put it up against cards like Brute Force and Infuriate and other cards that are like, here's one mana that does like +2 or +3 power and does this and that. Like, uh, Brute Force is +3/+3. Infuriate is +3/+2. Some of these effects are like +2/+2 or +2/+1, and First Strike and Trample or whatever. And they're like a single red to cast. Or Titan Strength, I think, was like red plus, or one red, and it was like uh, +2/+1 or something like that. And then like Scry 1 or something. So Enrage is very much fallen by the wayside. It is the sort of card that if you are playing with cards like Channel or something remotely similar, where you've got like the green Omnath, the one that like the mono green Omnath that lets you save up mana, you know, something like that. You could combine with Enrage to just suddenly nuke somebody out of nowhere. But yeah, realistically, wouldn't bother these days. Green cards. Kurgadon. 2 turn 2s and a Kurgadon. So 5 mana for a 3/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell, mana value 6 or greater, put 3+1 counters on this creature. Again, step 1 to this. Anything with an X spell while it's being, like, with an X as cost, while it's being cast, X is whatever it is while you're casting it. So if you cast, you know, a if you cast a Hydra that's like 2 green plus 5, or 2 green plus X, and you make X equal 5, while it's being cast, it's a 7 mana card, so that will give counters to the Kurgadon. If it's, you know, double X plus 2, cool. X equal 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6. The 2 plus 2 is because X equal 2, but you had XX. So double 2 is 4. And then the initial 2, which might be like 2 white or whatever. Plus that 2. So maybe I should have gone X equals 3 and it would have been easier to understand. In which case X equal, the entire cost is 8. And Kurgadon would get its counters. Or, Mirror Enforcer. Cool, it doesn't cost me anything because I got a bunch of artifacts in play. But it's a 7 mana creature. Here you go. So yeah, Kurgadon, if you're playing with enough creatures that can be cast on the cheap, or enough X spells or whatever, yeah. My only thing is this doesn't have anything like trample or anything like that. But then if you cast aggressive mammoth, let's say, well, aggressive mammoth will give it the +3 counters. And then suddenly it's got trample, and if Kurgadon's out first, and it's already been out for a couple turns by then, you start attacking with probably a 9/9 trample by then. That costs you like 5 mana. Good creature if you've got enough higher casting cost stuff to make it work. Claws of Wirewood. You know where I'm playing Claws of Wirewood? Mono green burn. Why? Because it deals 3 damage to each player. Also flyers, but each player. Also, it has cycling, which is also fun. Also, you technically count as being popular legal because you're in Vintage Masters. I'm like, wait, what? That's funny. Okay, yeah. You might actually play this straight up, just deal with a bunch of like small, medium-sized flying creatures. I'm playing it because I want to be able to burn in 8 people playing green. Divergent Growth. 1 green, instant, land suddenly tapped for any color. There's enough ways to get this as a permanent effect. Wouldn't bother. And you can do that on, for like 3 mana or thereabouts. That being said, if you do want something that you can just, if you just need it like a little bit instead of regularly, it's still fine. Would not bother throwing it on Ice Crown Scepter, but it's still fine. Accelerated mutation. We mentioned that earlier. Uh, if you're not, the problem is you got to compare it to giant growth. One green gives +3/+3. Monstrous growth is like one green +1, give +4/+4. Both are instant. Both are instant, so you really need something that gives a lot more than +3/+3 or +4/+4, because you're spending 5 mana on it. I'd say you have to be giving like at least +7 or +8. But you know what? Uh, Might of Oaks, 4 mana, +7/+7. So this is a green more than Might of Oaks, which means, I mean, I might accept +7/+7, but you're fighting with Might of Oaks for that. So you really want this to be getting more than that, which means you need big stuff that you can cast. Like, you need stuff that costs more than 7 mana that you can get out fast. If you've got enough of it, I mean, and you could also, here's the other thing. If you're playing with things like, I was going to say Next Bloom Ancient, which would also help, but if you're playing with Nixos, Shrine of Nyx, and stuff of that nature, then sure, you can probably accelerate some really big stuff out fairly quickly. That, Nyx Lotus, etc. But yeah, if you're only getting +6/+6, I wouldn't bother. +5/+5, +6/+6, I wouldn't bother. +7, maybe. +8 is where I want it, or more. Woodcloaker. I think I passed on this in my commons only elf deck. Which is actually right here. 6 to cast or more for 4. For a 3/3. When it's turned face up, target creature gains trample till end of turn. I currently have this sorted by mana value. You are a 6-drop. Nope. Because I have Wildheart Invoker, which gives target creature for 8 mana. Target creature gets +5/+5 and gains trample till end of turn. Entourage of Trust gives, makes me the Monarch. Shrine Steward helps me find pieces. Spectral Hunt Caller, 5 mana, 4/4, Wolf Spirit. For green +5, creatures you control get +1/+1, gain trample till end of turn. Elvish Aberration, which could end up being cut at some point, unsure. 6 mana, 4/5 that taps for triple green or has 4 cycling. And Elder Life Mentor is in the wrong spot. You belong here. Yeah. Because the problem is, it only affects a single creature, and you're spending, realistically, you're spending 7 mana. 3 first and then 4 later, or you're spending 6 mana on a 3/3. And because it's it's a turn it face up trigger, you can't cheat that. Titanic Bullfox, 8 mana for 7/4 tramples at Mars for 7. If you really need more, like, there's already a decent number of 6, 7, 8 mana, 6/6 and larger tramplers. If you need it, this exists, but you should be able to find enough that this would end up being cut. Break Asunder is naturalized at double the price as a sorcery with cycling. Play Wilt instead. It is literally naturalized with cycling 2. Wilt? Yes, Wilt. 1 green, 1 other, instant. Destroy target artifact enchantment. Cycling 2. If you want that effect, play this instead. Or, if you're looking at a 4 mana sorcery, find something that does more than just this. Creeping Mold, for example, also gives the ability of blowing up a land, for example. Or Bramble Crush. Destroy target non-creature permanent, I think it is. If you're spending 4 mana on a sorcery, have it be worth 4 mana. Primitive Etchings. 2 green, 2 other. Reveal the first card you draw each turn. Whenever you reveal a creature card this way, draw a card. Gets you occasionally an extra card draw. You have to show what you're drawing every turn. But if it's a creature, you get an extra card. So you are drawing a card for a turn, but if it's a creature, you get an extra. And the rulings down here. If you have more than one of these on the battlefield, only 1 card is revealed because both of them reveal the same card. Both will trigger if this card is a creature and thereby allow you to draw 2 cards. So in other words, if you have this and say copy enchantment on it. Cool. I reveal the first card I draw each turn to both of them. And if it happens to be a creature card, I get to draw an extra card from this and an extra card from this. If you're looking for a Green Phyrexian Arena-ish card, Primitive Etchings is not bad. I would accept Primitive Etchings for that kind of slot. Werewood Guardian. Think I had this as a consideration for my mono green elves, and I think I finally said no because it didn't quite do enough. It's a 7 mana 6/6 with 4 cycling 2, but it's just a 6/6. If it was 6/6 trample or 6/6 reach or 6/6 tap for a green or something, I would have. It just needed to do something else. Not quite enough for me. Dragon Fangs. As I mentioned through the rest of the, this is the green member of the Dragon Enchantments. +1/+1 and trample. Can jump onto a creature if you've got an expensive creature that comes into play. You're playing with enough expensive creatures. Cool, I cast this on one of mine. Oh, it dies, and this fell into the graveyard? Okay, next big creature I cast this jumps on. Oh, that died? Okay, next big creature I cast this jumps on. It keeps jumping around. Jump around. Jump up, and get down. Treetop Scout. 1 green for a 1/1. Cannot be blocked except by creatures with flying. Creatures with reach don't count. It actually has to be a flying creature, but this does not have flying. This is a green creature. This is a 1/1 green creature with flying without having flying. This is actually better than a 1/1 flyer for green because it can only be blocked by flyers. Creatures with reach don't count. Creatures with reach, such as Giant Spider, don't actually have flying, so they can't block this. Yeah. I think I actually have that in this deck because it's harder to block. Treetop Scout. No! I know I wanted to. Oh, did I put you in my regular one? I might have put in the regular one. I think I didn't do it. Oh no, I didn't do it in this one because I wanted more stuff that tapped for mana. But I think maybe I put it in Golgari. Did I not? Treetop Scout. Oh, boo. I know I had it somewhere. I can't remember now. Go away. Really? I was sure I had it. I know I looked at it. I know I was thinking about it. But I guess not. That's a shame. Ancient Ooze. But yeah. Again, if you want something that's basically a 1/1 flyer without being a 1/1 flyer, Treetop Scout. Ancient Ooze. Has parent toughness equal to the total mana value of other creatures you control. Tokens that say, I'm a copy of X, have the mana value of what they're copying. Like, of what their token that's a copy of. So, if, make a token that's a copy of, Stormcrow. Stormcrow is 1 blue, 1 other, so a token that's a copy of it is going to have is going to appear to have a cost of 1 blue, 1 other, so it'll have a mana value of 2. But anything that says make a token, create a blah token, unless that blah says, imposes a mana value or a mana cost, or appears to have a, if it's not copying a thing, it's going to have a mana value of 0. So create a, create a 4/4 beast token, mana value 0. So those won't qualify. So, barring most tokens that'll get generated. This has got parent toughness equal to the combined mana value of everything else. So if you've got a 6-drop, a 4-drop, and a 12-drop, you're going to be looking at, cool, that's 22 mana. So this is a 22/22. Problem is, then you need something like Aggressive Mammoth or Chroma's Memorial or something to give it, because it's literally just a giant vanilla creature. It's going to be a huge vanilla creature, because if this is the top of your curve and you've got a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 5-drop, it's a 7 mana 10/10. But it's just a 7 mana 10/10. It has no abilities. It can get chump blocked all day long. So yeah, so that's a problem. Now, that being said, we only have 4 multicolored cards in the set. Only. Corona False God is a 6 mana, and in modern days would probably be Warburg plus a colorless mana. What people like to incorrectly term a wastes mana. But you get a 6 mana 5/5 with haste. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, they untap Corona and gain control of it. When she attacks, because I believe Corona, if memory serves me correctly, is like from what? Some combination of like Phage and Jessica or something like that. Was manifestation. Being described as female. By the aggregation of Acroma, Phage, and Zagorka, who is what? Huh. Okay. Shark. Anyway, so is Phage wow. Did I forget already? Achroma. So it's like a merging of Phage, Achroma, and wait. Phage was like this evil minion thing. Achroma was an angel. Although I think it created angel. I don't remember. Um, and then a human. So basically, black plus white plus something that's neither. Kind of like an angel, a demon, and a Nephilim. Walked into a bar, etc. Anyway, um, when she attacks, creatures of your choice, creature type of your choice get +3/+3 till end of turn. So obviously you want to play this in a tribal deck. Incidentally, if you're playing an Avatar deck, and I mean Avatar the creature type, not Avatar the Last Airbender, Lost Airbender, whatever. Um, if you're doing that, you know, fine. You name Avatar. Corona's going to get the +3 because it says creatures, not other creatures. Um, Thunk. So she'll be an 8/8. Uh, yeah. Uh, you like playing a weird chaotic deck or something like that? The biggest problem with the biggest problem with Corona is the fact that somebody that's got like a bunch of like random like squirrel tokens, pardon me, squirrel tokens for example, that's going to start off as they're going I named squirrel. Okay, they're now at least 4/4s plus whatever other buffs happen to be floating around. Will kill somebody possibly, and the person that controls Corona or that owns Corona will probably die at the end. But that's why. But yeah. You want to play chaotic shenanigans, and you want to play 5 color. Corona is a pretty good, general for shenanigans. Edgewalker. The first card to come out that allowed the cost of a card to be reduced by colored mana. Because you had stuff like Jet Medallion, reduce the cost of all black spells by a colorless mana. This would reduce the cost of cleric spells by black mana and white mana. Which hilariously meant that if you had Edgewalker out and you went to cast the second one, the second one would cost you 1 mana. No black mana, no white mana, just the colorless mana, which could be replaced with black or white when you try to pay for the cost, but whatever. Yeah, enjoy. You obviously play this in a deck with enough clerics, or changelings, and it says cleric spells. It doesn't say cleric creature spells. So if you're playing with changelings and you cast, I don't know, Nameless Inversion, it has changeling, so it has all creature types, which means it also has its Also the cleric type. You can cast this will this will reduce it from black +1 to 1. The black is knocked out. Enjoy. Sliver Overlord. Oh, I'm playing slivers? I want this in my 100 somewhere. I don't know if I want it to be my general or if I want it to be one of the 99, but I want it in there somewhere. You're playing slivers, you are playing this. Bladewing the Risen. Are you playing with dragons? Are you playing at least Rakdos? Yeah. This can also be a combo piece. This in combination with... If you've got one of those things that's like whenever a creature comes in play or whenever a creature dies under your control, ping your opponent. Get this to reanimate something that can come into play as a copy of Bladewing. And so you just infinitely loop them. Yeah. Artifacts. Stabilize. Players can't cycle cards. It's fine. The biggest card, for the most part, people are just going to be cycling like certain lands, and that's about it. It's a rare time they're going to cycle something else unless they've got a deck based around cycling. In which case, let them cycle all they want, kill whatever their payoff is. Green and white have got great answers to those because they've got Beast Within and Generous Gift, both of which are, 3 mana instants that start off with destroy target permanent. They get a 3/3 to replace it. But yeah. Or makes their cycling actually cost more. Cycling is an activated ability. If you can increase the cost of activated abilities. Arc of Blight. 2 mana artifact. 3 tap and sack it. Destroy target land. I saw this back in the day. I thought this was going to be like a okay-ish replacement for like Strip Mine. For like standard or whatever. It never really caught on. But I mean, you playing Commander. If you don't have access to Strip Mine or Wasteland or whatever, maybe they're too expensive and you want something that can blow up target land. This is an artifact. Being able to recur artifacts is not actually hard. Bring back a 2 mana artifact from your graveyard is not hard. If you can bring it back into play, so much the better. Sanctum Gargoyle? Yeah, Sanctum Gargoyle. When it enters, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. 4 mana for 2/3 with raised dead for artifacts instead of creatures. Start playing with cards like that and just go, hey, by the way, kill that. 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 Oh, look, my creature's dead? Okay, I'll bring that back, and then that comes into play and brings back my... Yeah. Proteus Machine. It's a 3 mana 2/2 that with a morph of 0, so cast it face down, then turn it face up right away. When it's turned face up, it becomes the creature type of your choice. That's all it does. It's an extra cleric, or it's an extra shape, an extra dragon, or it's an extra jellyfish, or it's an extra something. Eh. And what do we get? Oh, Scourge brought us one land, which sees so much play, and some people are like, why do you keep playing this card? It's bad. Temple of the False God. Um, it tries to be Soul Ring as a land. It tries to be Soul Ring as a land. Um, it's okay. It's not insane, but it's okay. And its biggest drawback is it requires you to have like 4 other lands in play. Thankfully, it says 5 or more lands, not 5 or more other lands. So this can be your 5th land, which could bring you from 4 to 6, or from because depending on what your mana base looks like. The problem with it, I think the biggest problem with this is you don't want to play this in the same deck in general as like balance lands or uh what do you call it? I can see you. Lotus Field. And the reason I bring those up specifically is because they will slow you down in mana development. This is trying to speed you up, but those are slowing you down, so it will take longer for this one to kick in. It is a land though, so you can always like you have a Maya Cradle of Growth or Urborg Tome of Yawgmoth and do that and at least get it to tap for something until you can have it turn into a Soul Ring as well. But yeah, that's it for tonight. I think next week we'll finally be back on Tuesdays regularly. We hope. Um, and at that point, I think next week we're going to start doing some of the oddball sets that came out before Mirrodin did. So we'll be looking at stuff like Starter 99 and Starter 2000 and Portal Second Age, Portal 3 Kingdoms. It might take a few weeks to get through those, but I'm going to get through those. And hopefully before October starts, we'll be able to start on actual factual, starting off with actual Mirrodin. So, I don't know. Hopefully by the end of the year we got, what, Mirrodin. We might be, so starting next year, we might be jumping in a time, so starting in 2026, haven't done the actual math, but we might be jumping in a time spiral by then. I'll try and figure out a way to pull it off so we get to time spiral then. No promises, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for tonight. See you guys all next week. Should be back on Tuesday, barring shenanigans going on. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. Bye.